say no. There is no, they wouldn't be able to say no, believe me. So, and then say, I'd like to give a 10-minute talk on the homestead law. I'd like to give I wrote my paper on XYZ, I'd like to give a talk on it. No matter what it is, they'll let you talk. It doesn't matter what you say, by the way. It doesn't matter how good your talk is. Bring a little handout. Always hand something out that has your name and all your contact information. Even if they say, no, we don't have handouts, just bring it yourself. Hand it out, make it the bullet points or something like that. It'll be a great experience, and then they'll ask you to be on the board of the Estate Planning Council, and then within 5 years you'll be the president of the Estate Planning Council. Same thing works, in the different organizations. But you know what you might want to do is what I would think would be fun for you to do. Send an email to your favorite high school teacher, your favorite junior high school teacher, your favorite English teacher from college, and say, hey, I'm going to be back in town such and such a day. I would love to come talk to one of your classes about what it's like to go to law school. Develop some confidence, get in touch with your roots. You don't have to speak to other lawyers at first. You can speak to anyone you like. Okay, page 9. The client has no idea whether you're a good lawyer, and they never will. They never will know. Just like when I go to a doctor, I have no idea. I go to the emergency room because I have a sore throat at 2 in the morning. I have no idea whether that doctor even is really a doctor. So, right? And no one will ever ask you what your class rank was at FSU and what your grade was in estate planning. They want someone who looks and acts professional, sincerely cares about them, writes a letter after the conference explaining eloquently what was discussed and accurately what was discussed, delivers reasonable documents to them within a few days, follows through professionally, is friendly and cares about them. I mean, that's what they need, that's what they want, that's what you need to be. Now, your referral sources may also want you to actually know what you're doing, and I certainly recommend that you know what you're doing. But it's really about, is the office nice? It doesn't have to be opulent, it just has to be nice. Is your approach nice? Did you take good notes? Did you act professionally? So, just have that in mind. Page 10. Jay Foonberg wrote a great book, I think in the 70s, called How to Get and Keep Good Clients. Show a lot of effort immediately. You can really impress people. Why does Walmart have greeters? Why does every restaurant that you walk into that's a nice restaurant have somebody who greets you? Not because they need to greet you, but because first impressions are so important. It's so important that I walk into that conference room, that first of all, the client shows up, the receptionist knows their name, puts them immediately into a very clean, nice conference room. Ask them if they have anything they would want to have copied so that I have a copy and they have a copy, because it's awkward if they hand you something and you're reading it together. Offers them coffee. We have a little refrigerator in our conference room. They can get anything they want, including muscle drinks or a beer. And then I'm in there within 5 minutes. I don't know about you guys, but I hate to wait for doctors and other professionals. If I'm not in there within 5 minutes, they've got an apology. Then maybe I'm 7 or 8 minutes. I walk in, I make eye contact, I give them my name, I say their names, I've memorized their names, I use their first names or their last names. With your ages, you'll want to be using their last names until they say, please call me by my first name. Once they say that, always call them by their first name forever thereafter. Most people would prefer to be called by their first name once they've given that consent. I've sat down. I match their rapport. I use something that you might be interested in called neurolinguistic programming. There's a few things in that school of communications, and one is If they're leaning forward, I lean forward. If they're leaning back, I lean back. If they talk fast, I talk fast. If they talk slow, I talk slow. I want to be in rapport with them. I ask an open-ending question. My first question is, who sent you to me? What a great person we have in common. I'm so glad you're here. I'm glad that happened. What can I do for you? What can I do for you? And then I stop. Sometimes I don't say another word for 15 minutes. Sometimes they say, I want an estate plan, and I have to lead the conversation. But I want them to feel comfortable with me, but I do write everything down. I do write everything down. One reason I do is, if you haven't guessed, I've got ADD, and I can't remember very well. And I also will go into daydreams, but if I'm writing it all down, I won't do that. I started typing my notes during conferences, and I found that the clients find that to be distracting. And when I'm taking notes, they're actually looking at my notes sometimes, which they can help correct me. So after the meeting, the client walks out, and what I do is I turn on a dictaphone immediately, and I call in the secretary who's most likely to help me, and I recite every single thing about that client that has to be remembered. Because one thing, your mind will fool you into thinking that you'll remember things in 2 days. You won't. So everything they told me that I need to remember, if it's not clearly in my notes, I dictate it, and then it goes into my memory. If I have time, I do that as a letter to the client. Dear Glenn and Belinda, it was great meeting you. I wanted to reiterate what we discussed. And then every single thing we discussed goes into a letter. And that letter is not only a letter to them, but it is a letter to be read by my paralegal who knows what to do. The letter says, you were going to get us a copy of your car title, but if you can't find it, my paralegal is going to search the public records for you. Which, by the way, you can do with a detective report. You can't do it through the Division of Motor Vehicles, but you can order a detective report, and they're available to lawyers nowadays very inexpensively. Everything that client was supposed to do for you goes in that letter, and everything you were supposed to do for that client goes in that letter. And that letter, if you are good, goes out that day or the next day. They are so impressed. In fact, their business lawyer and their litigation lawyer takes 3 weeks to get them a letter. You just got them a letter in 4 hours. And your letter says that by Saturday, they're going to have X, Y, and Z. Now, why do I say Saturday? Because most of my clients are working Monday through Friday, and they're not going to really pay attention to what I get them till Saturday. And I want to impress them. So they're going to get their first draft estate planning documents on their doorstep by UPS on Saturday and by email. Why? Number one, I've got a much better chance that they're going to read it while they're still motivated. Number two, who do you think they're going to call next time they need a legal service? You think they're going to call that lawyer that takes 4 weeks, or that lawyer who got them a first draft on Saturday? Now, that first draft is not going to be a perfect draft. It might even say, I've enclosed everything but the revocable trust. I'm still working on the revocable trust, but I wanted to get everything else to you. Especially that power of attorney to your aunt, because that one was so important. So now, when you find that you need more information, because when you write that letter, the secretary is going to say, you mean the uncle's the personal representative and you didn't ask for his name? Well, just send them a short email. John and Mary, it was great meeting with you. I have to admit, it's not clear from my notes what your uncle's name is. They'll love that. You're human. That's okay to be human. So, this is that process. Now, you've all joined health clubs and noticed that nobody shows up. So your chances of these clients actually reading your estate planning documents and getting back to you are somewhere between 60 to 70% at best. But the chances go up significantly if you get the documents right out to them. The chances also go up significantly if you can get them to commit to a review session that is calendared before they leave your first meeting. So in other words, I say, hey, John and Mary, it was great meeting you. I'm going to try to get you these documents by Saturday, maybe not, but if I can, great. Could we set up a call for a week from Thursday at 5 o'clock? You guys can be at home together, maybe even 6 o'clock. Open a bottle of wine, and I'll walk you through these documents. You don't need to read them, to be honest. I'll walk you through them. It'll be much easier for you to understand these documents if I can walk you through them. Or would you like to come back in and review them? And if they can get their calendars out and write down the time, and you immediately send them an email and an invite on their Outlook, that's like gold. That's like real gold. Because most lawyers don't do that. Most lawyers just leave it to be. So, that's where the effort immediately. Now, the other thing we do that most lawyers don't do, but we do, and it works really good for us, is we chart out their assets. And I think somewhere I probably have an example chart in the big materials. But, we go to the public records. We look at the Secretary of State, the SunBiz site. We look at deeds. We Google them. And when they walk in and they go, oh my gosh, you know all this stuff. I didn't give you this. And I say, yeah, and your future creditors know all this stuff too. How does that feel? I can help provide you with some confidentiality if that's important to you. Right now, this is what your creditors already know. So when it's visual on an Excel document with a circle for every company, a little square for each piece of property, each person is there, they can look at that and they can give you the information much faster than if you're trying to take it for the first time. And I also give them the tax appraised value for each piece of real estate, and I give them the Zillow value. Because if they look at the Zillow value and they go, yeah, that looks right. On the other hand, I may have to listen to them talk about value for 5 minutes, and candidly, that's a waste of time a lot of times. So we try to get the information up front. I can send you our intake form. We hired a really good consultant who has our intake form as simple and as easy as it can be. Don't send them a 40-page intake form. You'll never get it back. If you're going to try to do something like that, say, please fill out the first 5 pages before our meeting if possible, but they'll never show up. If you tell them they have to fill out the form before they show up, you just lost a client. They're not going to even show up. Just say, we're looking forward to seeing you. It would be helpful if you would fill out this form. And it would really be helpful if you got it to us in advance. But if they don't blow a client over that. You need them in the door. And, I think that's part of this. Page 11, I've got an agenda. Now, I never use this agenda, but it's handed to the client when they walk in the door. And the secretary says, here's some of the things that Mr. Gassman may cover with you. So during that 5 or 6 minutes, when they have time, because you do want to leave them in that conference room 5 or 6 minutes so they can clear their mind, they're looking at things and they're saying, wow, there's a lot to estate planning, isn't there? And we better think about these things. So the first item is we review their family information. We want to know who they are. We want to show we care about them. Secondly, we review their financial information. The third thing I ask, and we never do it in this order, but this is, things we try to do, is there enough life insurance that if you die, everybody's okay? If you're relatively young, or the client's not over age 60, if you die, is there enough for everybody? And one rule of thumb that you may want to get comfortable with is that typically a well-invested stock and bond portfolio will last forever at a 4% per year withdrawal rate. And I can send you articles on that. So, if dad dies and has $2 million, mom and the kids need to live on $80,000 a year. Is that enough? Well, no, it's not enough. We live on $200,000 a year now. How much life insurance do I need for $200,000 a year? Well, you need $5 million of life insurance, and you only have $2 million, so you need another $2 million of assets. You need $3 million worth of life insurance. Go get it. I want that conversation to take place right in my conference room. By the way, I mentioned to them that the vast majority of clients only need term life insurance. They end up going out and getting sold permanent insurance, which is, usually not needed. And I want you to accept consideration of my very biased view that the life insurance industry compensates life insurance agents really well to sell products that people don't need, and they're not as good for them. And I have a book I'm writing on life insurance, and what I tell my clients is, look, I want you to at least buy term insurance. I happen to know somebody who can do it all by phone. It's very easy. She can set up the exam. She can get all your information. She can get a commitment from you to get term insurance in place. And if you want permanent, that's great, but most clients don't need it. And if you buy permanent, the insurance agent makes 5 times as much. Oh, no wonder my insurance agent keeps bothering me. So, this is something I'm telling you that we're going to edit from the video, right? But as lawyers, I think you need to know that early in your career, life insurance agents are going to come to you, offer to refer you business and do all sorts of things. And then 15 years later, the clients are going to come to you and say, man, I bought that permanent insurance policy. I put in $10,000 a year for 15 years, and it's only worth $100,000, and I don't need it anymore. Why did you let me do that? So you guys are going to have to educate yourself on life insurance. Maybe if you go to work as a life insurance agent, it's a different thing, but that's my biased view on that. Then I always want to show them a chart of the plan. So I have a chart that talks about a revocable trust. I've got a chart that talks about a husband and wife revocable trust. I've got a chart that talks about a joint trust. Because 65% of people are visual learners. So the chances are that most of you are visual learners. And a picture is worth 1,000 words. A picture is worth $1,000. So draw it for them. Even if you're just drawing on a legal pad that you hand to them, or if you have some sort of pre-printed illustration, I'll send you a bunch of samples. They'll say, oh yeah, good, I see. Now, if you have a client, and I'm off on tangents here, but if you have a client who keeps saying, I hear you, and they keep going like this, then they're auditory learners. They're not visual learners. That's about 30% of the people are auditory learners. When you have an auditory learner, slow down and be very much aware that they learn by auditory. And it's a little bit different of a game. You'll slow down your speech a little bit and you'll be a little bit more articulate because they're not really going to learn at the same pace as a visual learner can learn if you're showing them things. And an auditory learner is much happier if you'll explain documents on the phone than if you try to get them to read a long letter. Some clients will confide in you that they're dyslexic or that they just can't read, they don't want to read. So you can be sensitive to that and just understand that they're not going to read all your documents. This brings to mind that when I send them that letter after the first meeting, anything that's really unique, any special provisions, I would like to dictate them with that letter and include them in the letter. John and Mary, you let me know that your son John, it has some real issues in the past, and that you never want him to receive more than $3,000 a month for his whole lifetime as adjusted for inflation until he gets a graduate school career and has worked for 3 years in a row. My suggested clause for this is as follows, colon indent, here it is in the letter. That's really your best chance of them actually reading the clause and allowing them to give you feedback. Also in that letter, anything and everything stupid that they're going to do needs to be discouraged in that letter. Mary, you let me know that you don't believe in insurance and that you're proud that you've never insured your home or your rental property and that you've saved at least $100,000 over the years. Notwithstanding this, it's my job as an attorney to recommend that you at least have liability insurance, and please don't hate me for it. Just anything like that. Because Steve and I can tell you that the human psychology has a bias towards blaming others. People make the worst mistakes after intentional conduct, and then their subconscious mind, not allowing them to accept the blame, decides to blame someone else. And why not blame that lawyer who has a malpractice insurance policy? John and Mary, I strongly recommended that you get enough life insurance in place and that you also set up a buy-sell agreement with your new partner. You're only going to be a 49% partner in this new deal. I recommended that you be a 51% partner. I let you know that a 49% partner has no control, and I also recommended that you do a buy-sell agreement so that if one of you dies, the 51% partner has to buy you out, and that you have a put right. I realize you're not going to do that after our conversation, but I really felt it was important to just ask you one more time to consider this. I mean, Steve can tell you 100 stories of where you told the client something in the conference room, and then 5 years later, the kids come in and say, Dad never would have done that. And then you're going to have tremendous perspiration as you go through the file and find that letter that you hope you wrote. So anything and everything that can go wrong in your estate plan, and any idiosyncrasy that the client has, you want to put in that letter. If it's really important, it needs to be in a separate letter. Dear John, I felt that this was really important. I'm putting it in this separate letter. Can you please email me back to acknowledge that you got it? Even better yet, I'm going to ask you to sign the bottom of this letter in our planning. It's a free country. I respect what you're doing, but I don't want your grandchildren to think that I didn't advise you this way. Because everybody, a lot of great clients do a lot of dumb stuff. So you just want to be on the lookout for that. And guess what? 1 in 10 times they may actually do the right thing as the result of you sending that letter. So Steve, you have anything to add to that?
Only to agree and amplify with what you said about practicing law defensively sometimes.
Right, right.
When you can see that coming, when you can see them about to disagree with your advice, you got to protect yourself, because you, as a lawyer, you've got insurance, and you may be the only deep pocket they can shoot at.
Right, right. Now, one of the biggest mistakes we see other lawyers make is not making it very clear who is responsible for beneficiary designations and asset titling. You could draw the most beautiful documents that ever existed, but if the client doesn't make the life insurance owned by the life insurance trust or payable to the right place, the client dies and millions of dollars go to the wrong place. And people get angry. They get very angry when that happens. So we strongly encourage our clients to let us do the change of ownership and change of beneficiary forms, to let us contact the brokerage firms. But when we take that responsibility, we take it very seriously. We have the best paralegal in our office under a lawyer's supervision, make sure that it gets done right. And we probably have $30,000 or $40,000 a year sometimes of legal fees and paralegal fees just for that type of coordination. And if the client says, no, I'll do it myself, you need to make sure that there's 2 or 3 different letters saying, here's the instructions, here's what it needs to be, let us know if you have any questions. And if you're really smart, you'll automatically send another letter 8 weeks later. Dear John and Marge, just wanted to remind you that you took responsibility for change of beneficiary forms and change of ownership. Here's the instructions I sent you 8 weeks ago. If you need any help, please let me know. So I think that's where a lot of mistakes get made. Now in the agenda, you're also going to ask them about their parents' estate plan, You don't want them to inherit directly if they might get sued or divorced. You want their parents to leave a trust system for them that can protect them from creditors and protect them from estate tax. 90% of the documents that I draft for clients never leave assets directly to anyone in any large amount. So if I die, I have a very responsible wife and I have a very responsible daughter. But what happens if I die personally? My wife is co-trustee with her choice of any trust company on the planet Earth, or our pharmacist PhD friend, our CPA, a lawyer friend, or our next door neighbor who's a CFO for a big company. My wife can choose any one or more of those people or any trust company. My wife is strong enough now to be sole trustee, but guess what? She may lose 10 IQ points in the car wreck we're in that kills me. Or she may be depressed that I leave, and she may get into alcohol and drugs. She may remarry Mr. Wrong. My daughter might marry the son-in-law from hell. And when my wife breaks her hip at age 85, the son-in-law from hell may slip her a Mickey and take all her assets. So all my clients are strongly encouraged to keep everything in trust for life. If my wife and I die, our daughter is a delightful 32-year-old psychologist. Her head is definitely, she's definitely more stable than I am even. She's a great gal, but she's never going to be trustee alone. She's always going to have a trust company. Because look at it this way. A responsible child shouldn't mind having a co-trustee. When you can replace them, they'll pretty much do what you want them to do. But an irresponsible child is going to mess it all up. Now, if the client says, I insist that my son will be all in charge, then say, that's fine. Your son will be trustee for himself with the power to receive whatever he needs for health, education, and maintenance. And under the Florida Trust Code, as a result of that, the son's creditors can't reach the trust. Now, in other states, they might be able to, but usually not. But then, and I'll be glad to send you our documents, I also have other provisions which say no trustee can act as sole trustee if she or he has had an alcohol drug problem, bankruptcy, divorce. At that point, they must choose a co-trustee. And then I say, and how about your parents? Are they going to leave you anything? If they are, we can set up an inheritance trust. You won't fund it now, but your parents will change their documents to say, instead of their assets going directly to our son John, the assets will go to the John Smith Inheritance Trust. Now, it would make more sense for the parents to adjust their documents to provide for that inheritance trust in their documents. But that's a battle too hard to work. They're older, they're reluctant to do it, their lawyer doesn't know how to do it. It's much easier for your client to form that trust, and then it'll only have $10 in it. It'll just sit there. It won't have to do anything until the parents die, and then their will direct it into that trust. And by the way, is there a buy-sell agreement for your business? And by the way, why is this rental property not under an LLC to save liability? And by the way, why don't you have an arm's length lease between your medical practice and and the LLC that owns the property, a 20-year lease which can protect the assets of the medical practice? Because remember, at the beginning of the talk, this is not only your profession, but this is your business. This is your business. So you're going to find other things these clients need, and that's going to be a win-win, because you're going to be able to provide these other things. Because you're not only going to know estate planning, you're going to know the other areas of law that are fed by the estate planning. So you can read the rest of the agenda for yourself. Now, page 15, I just go into more of what I've discussed, where I talk about communications and communication skills. Page 16 is just thinking about your core. If your core business is estate planning, what are your other businesses going to be? I personally don't know any really successful estate planner who does more than 40 to 50% estate planning. Most of what we do is what comes in because of the estate planning. And I honestly know that if I did nothing but estate planning, I would be a blithering idiot, because it can be a little bit boring. But if I do 40 to 50% estate planning, it's a great level. So you just will be thinking about this. More about the business of law, just because you need to know this, and you can use this analysis. It's called the SWOT analysis. It's been around for 50, 60 years. You'll see it written about in a lot of books. One of my favorite authors and professors, Peter Drucker, he wrote 37 books on business. The SWOT analysis has these categories. What are the person's or entity's strengths? What are the person's or entity's weaknesses? What are their opportunities, and what are their threats? So when a client sits down, I'm looking for their strengths and their passions. Well, I make good money, I've got a lot of money, I like to work, I have a PhD, and I'm a doctor. Those are all strengths. What are their weaknesses? Well, they don't have an estate plan, they don't have enough insurances, and they have dyslexia, they don't really know what's going on with their documents. What are their opportunities? Well, they could grow their assets, they can make more money, they can open up a charity to get more recognition, they can open up more offices. And what are their threats? They could be sued for malpractice, they could get divorced, their children could become drug addicts. Once I know what their strengths, their weaknesses, their opportunities, and their threats are, if I can help them use their strengths and their opportunities to overcome their weaknesses and their threats, I'm their most important advisor. Just for fun, fill one of these out on your parents. What's your mom's strengths, opportunities, weaknesses, and threats, and how can you help your mom? What are your strengths, opportunities, weaknesses, and threats? How can other people help you? What are your referral sources, strengths, opportunities, weaknesses, and threats? So there's very successful business consultants. The only thing they do for a living is go from business to business applying this model. So I've got some of this filled out at page 18. Now, page 19, I've got the Paredes principle, which works in law, and that is the 80-20 rule. How many people have heard of the 80-20 rule? 80% of your clients are going to come from 20% of your referral sources. 80% of your money is going to come from 20% of your clients. 80% of the mistakes in your office are going to come from 20% of the employees. 80% of the problems in your office are going to come from 20% of the clients. If you can concentrate on the 20% that gives you the 80% and cut out the 20% that causes you 80% of the problems or only provides you with 5% of your revenues, you're going to improve your practice and your life dramatically. So you can even think about that now. 20% of your time is giving you 80% of your learning. 20% of your friends are giving you 80% of your enjoyment of life. So, think of things in that way and hit that 20%. It can make a big difference and help clients understand that 20% also. A lot of clients are going to come to you and say, oh, I'm so busy, I can't get anything done. I'm so busy, I can't get anything done. Say, well, I heard about this 80-20 rule. What's your biggest time waster? Well, my biggest time waster is this. Well, why don't you stop doing it? Voila! So, these types of things, I find them interesting. Now, page 20, remember what I said. I went out to lunch with every CPA I could find. I went out to dinner with every CPA and their wife that I could find. I faxed to every doctor I could find. You've got to plant those seeds early. I get business now from people I met 25 years ago who never sent me business before. It doesn't come right away, but you need to decide,
who your referral sources are going to be. These are key communicators, people who really talk you up. They're clients, they're clergymen, they'll prove themselves to be your advocate. And you have to decide, what you're going to do to get these things. Now, page 21, dealing with people who have terminal illnesses, go fast. When somebody has cancer, they've just learned that they're going to die, or they're really scared, they have a surgery coming up, you go really, really fast. I'm going to tell you 3 reasons that you go really, really fast. The first reason, believe it or not, is that they may get upset and change their mind and not do what they need to do. It is very depressing to be dying, and medications that they put them on don't help at all. So when the person has a serious illness, they say, well, I may have a year and a half to live. I want to get them back in my office in a day and a half. And I tell them, I'm pretty frank with them, I'm like, listen, every year I have a major nightmare in my practice and in my life because someone I care about that's in the middle of an estate plan dies. And by the way, always tell stories. Always tell stories. It's one thing to say you need a lot of insurance. It's better to say a client just died 3 months ago and his wife is having to work at Burger King just to get the insurance because they didn't have enough money. That's a much better way of encouraging somebody to get life insurance. But anyway, back to the terminal illness. The second thing that happens is that, and especially oncologists, just so you know, it's scientifically proven that somebody with cancer will live longer if their doctor tells them that they will live longer. So the life expectancy may be an 80% chance of dying between 8 and 25 months. The oncologist is going to tell them 30 months. That makes the patient feel better, makes the family feel better, and is scientifically proven to work. But that client may die in 8 weeks. Pancreatic cancer is often a 10 to 14 week death sentence. And what does the patient do? They immediately go on chemo and radiation, which blows their mind. So get it done fast. Even if they really have 24 months to live, they may catch a cold. So, and when the family sees you move fast, when the other advisors see you move fast, when they see you go to their house, when they see you go to the hospital, when you go to the hospital and you walk in the room, you are unbelievably cheerful. Mary, you look so much better than I figured you would. Are they treating you well? Who's this nurse? Is she always joking around with you? Bring cheer and joy into that hospital room. Be the actress on the stage for that. Get that thing done. That's a challenge. Don't just send them documents and wait. The other thing you're going to find, and I just don't know what to do about it. Well, my husband was just diagnosed with cancer. I know he's going to die, but I don't want to talk to him about it. Then I talk to the husband. I just got diagnosed with cancer. I know I don't want to die. I know I'm going to die, but I don't want to talk to my wife about it. So neither of them will talk about it. So sometimes you have to separate them. You might just separate them by phone call. They come in together. You can't say, hey, you need to get out because some lawyer told me that you guys are not going to face the death deal unless I only talk to one of you or the other. But that's where you make the phone call the next day. You go, hey, whichever one answers. You just say, hey, I know we had that conversation yesterday. I'm just concerned. How's it going today? And the one who answers the phone, if the other one's not in the room, will then confide in you. Oh, I'm so scared. I know I'm going to die. I don't want to upset my wife about it, but we really need to get this done. So, that's the way it goes. And don't hesitate to call people on the phone and to have a one-on-one conversation. That also goes when a child has come in with their parent for the estate plan. and you're afraid that child is bossing the parent around, call the parent on the phone and say, hey, I was just calling, I wasn't sure. What's your middle initial? Is it D or E? Oh, it's E? Okay. And I forgot to ask you what your social security number is. Okay. And by the way, do you think there's any chance that your other children are going to be upset with us for doing this plan when your son brought you in and you have 2 other children and you're leaving that one house to your son? Do you think we're going to have any issues here? I mean, that's something I'm sure Steve's telling you how to handle these situations, but that comes to mind. The other thing is the ADD client on page 22. A very high proportion of your successful clients are very ADD. Most entrepreneurs are very ADD. They're the ones that didn't think about the risks and they got all the creative ideas. ADD people have a bunch of energy, but they only think you drone on and bore them to tears. So you don't have much time with an ADD client. They're fidgety, they're looking at their phone, they gotta go, they're taking phone calls. Don't take offense, but just realize that you got about 37 seconds. Which brings to mind that one of the things we do that I've done in the Dale Carnegie course is anything important that I can do for a client, I can explain in 2 minutes, because that's how long you have if you're lucky. So anything you can do, and when you're on your way home at night thinking about these legal concepts, explain them to yourself in 2 minutes. Understand that the client may not be listening. That's one of the reasons for the letter. But also just give the client a break. What I do with my clients, I'm building these really complicated things. I go, hey, Harry, guess what? When you come here, we're always going to take a 10-minute break every hour. Would you like that? Yes. They walk all over the office. They bother my secretaries. They play around they go out in the parking lot. They laugh. They have a great time. Sometimes we open a bottle of wine if it's in the evening. But that's just the ADD client. Because understand this, when you take the personality test, if you did well in law school, it means that you have a very long attention span and a very high need to know a lot of information and to explain a lot of information, just like a school teacher does. And for the ADD client, you sound like that teacher on the Charlie Brown cartoon. So many clients say, I have no idea what that last lawyer was telling me. And I say, well, I know that lawyer. He's a great lawyer. He understands everything he's doing. They say, yeah, but he just kept droning on and he could never get to the point. Now, you may have clients that need all the detail, but you need to try to understand early in your professional career how to spot the ADD client. Page 23.
Well, Alan.
I've got.
Alan.
Yes.
Alan. Hey, we're coming to the end of our allotted time, but I just wanted to thank you once again for being here and for sharing everything. Can we all get a round of applause?
Well, have a fantastic life. And if you want to just make your life a fantastic life, and remember that 85% of your working time can be enjoyable. It can be enjoyable. In fact, a lot of it and most of it should be a blast. So you do what it takes to make that happen. Obviously, Steve has, obviously, Bob has, and I'm confident that you will too. So thanks very much for hearing me out. It was a real pleasure.
We appreciate it. Thanks.